The silence of space stretched endlessly, a fragile calm before the storm. Admiral Dorian Raines stood on the bridge of the HSS Retribution, his gaze fixed on the tactical display as enemy markers shifted across the grid. The Galactic Dominion believed humanity was frail, just another planet to bend beneath their will, another species to enslave. They were about to discover how wrong they were. For centuries, the Dominion had battled the Turalis, a reptilian empire that spanned hundreds of star systems. That war had been a grueling stalemate, worlds traded and retaken in an endless grinding cycle, a brutal match of interstellar chess. But when the Dominion turned their gaze toward Sol, demanding Earth's submission, they made their deadliest mistake. Humans did not kneel. Humans endured. Humans fought. The conflict began as scattered raids, pirates, ambushes, colonies vanishing at the fringes. Then came the blockade of Mars. The Dominion expected a swift victory, but they hadn't accounted for humanity's unyielding will to endure. Now Earth answered with its full strength. "Admiral," came Commander Nathan Solis's voice from his station. "The Dominion fleet is locked in at the Lagrange point, defensive formation. Looks like they think they're ready." Admiral Raines allowed a thin smirk. "Then let's show them how mistaken they are." The human fleet surged forward like a storm. Sleek, predatory warships with hulls cloaked in adaptive camouflage melted into the darkness of space. Dominion sensors, tuned for conventional patterns, struggled to track them. By the time they registered the attack, it was already far too late. The opening strike was merciless. The HS Fury, HSS Nemesis, and HSS Warhammer led the assault. Kinetic rounds fired at near-light speeds, tearing through Dominion shields as though they were paper. Plasma fire ripped into enemy lines, scattering formations. A Dominion cruiser erupted in a blossom of fire, fragments spinning into the void. They had never witnessed anything like it. Humanity's technology wasn't the most advanced. Their ships weren't the largest. But they were fast, unpredictable, and most of all, they fought with a ruthless precision the Dominion, accustomed to drawn-out wars of attrition, had never faced. The flagship Trax Honor sent out a frantic distress call. Reinforcements were already inbound, but the truth was undeniable. They wouldn't last. "Bring the railguns online," Raines ordered, his eyes fixed on the holographic display. The Retribution's twin cannons charged, weapons of terrifying simplicity. The Dominion had seen plasma, they had seen torpedoes, but not this. Massive slugs hurled at unimaginable velocity, ripping ships apart with raw force. The first shot struck true. A Dominion battleship at the center of their line was split through its heart, vanishing in a storm of wreckage. Panic spread like wildfire. Formations shattered. Commanders trained in rigid hierarchy had no defense against opponents who anticipated and dismantled their every move with cold, brutal efficiency. "They're retreating," Solis reported, disbelief in his voice. Raines crossed his arms, watching the enemy scatter. Some fled. Others simply powered down and surrendered, sending out distress codes. "1 minute," he said coldly. "That's all it took. Let them run. Make sure the message spreads. Earth is not to be trifled with." The battle was done. Humanity had arrived, and the galaxy would never look the same. The Dominion's retreat sent shockwaves across every front. Armadas that once feared nothing now scrambled to rethink their strategies. The news spread like fire through dry brush. Humanity wasn't just another minor species. They were something far more dangerous, an enemy that didn't fight like the rest. They fought to win. Aboard the HSS Retribution, Admiral Dorian Raines stood before the towering holographic display in the war room. Officers gathered around him. The victory had been decisive, but he knew this was only the start. "Commander Nathan." Solis broke the silence first. "They won't let this go. We humiliated them. Their honor demands retaliation." Rains nodded, his expression hard. Exactly. Which is why we don't wait for the blow. We strike first. He turned to Major Lillian Carter, head of intelligence. What do we know about their nearest command hubs? Carter, a seasoned operative with years of Black Ops scars, tapped at her console. The display shifted, zooming in on Velenina heavily. Fortified Dominion Bastion. This is their strongest forward base in the region. If they regroup, it'll be here. Then we hit them first, Rains declared. We don't weather storms. We are the storm. A ripple of agreement passed through the officers. This was how humanity fought, not by standing still, but by carrying the fight into the enemy's heart. Still studying the feed, Solaces frowned. Velenine isn't just a garrison. Civilians are there too, refugees, non-combatants. Rains drew a long breath. The room went quiet. This was war, but humanity wasn't like the Dominion. They didn't slaughter indiscriminately, not like the colonies the Dominion had raised. We strike only military assets, he said firmly. Take out their command structure, and the civilians won't matter. We keep it clean. Carter nodded, though a flicker crossed her eyes. She knew better than most that war was never clean. Next hours blurred into relentless planning and precision. The fleet cut through slipstream corridors, emerging at Velenine undetected. The Dominion had barely begun regrouping when humanity fell upon them. The ambush was swift and merciless. Stealth bombers slipped past defenses before sensors could react. Railgun fire shredded supply stations, gutting their logistics. Precision strikes severed communications, isolating Velenine from the wider fleet. By the time Dominion forces scrambled to respond, the fight was already decided. The HSS Retribution led the charge. The Retribution hovered over the smoldering wreckage of Velenine, a silent predator above a broken carcass. A transmission request flared to life. On the screen, the face of a Dominion admiral appeared, reptilian features twisted with fury. You dare strike us like cowards? He hissed. You hide in the dark, striking from shadows. This is no war, it is dishonor. Rains leaned forward, his tone sharp as a blade. You misunderstand us, Admiral. We don't care about honor. We care about winning. The transmission cut abruptly. But the message was clear. Humanity was no longer seen as prey. They were predators, and the hunt had only just begun. Aftermath was brutal. Velenine, once a proud Dominion bastion, was now little more than burning wreckage. Fires smoldered across what had been its command center, leaving nothing of value behind. Once again, the Dominion had misjudged humanity, and the price had been devastating. Admiral Rains stood at the Retribution's observation deck, watching salvage drones pick through the ruins. The strike had been fast, clean, and merciless, just as planned. But he knew this was only the opening act. Commander Nathan Solaces approached, his face unreadable. The Dominion fleet isn't answering Velenine's distress calls. Either they're too afraid to face us, or they're planning something worse. Rains folded his arms. We've forced them into a corner. The next move will be desperation. Major. Lillian Carter's voice broke over comms. Admiral, we intercepted a transmission from deep inside Dominion space. Put it through. Carter's face filled the main screen, taut with concern. The Dominion High Command has just classified us as a Category Omega threat, their highest level. It's reserved for species deemed existential dangers. The bridge fell into silence. Everyone understood the weight of that declaration. Solaces exhaled slowly. That means total war. Every fleet, every soldier, every weapon they own, they'll throw it all at us. Rains didn't flinch. He had expected this, even if hearing it aloud carried a chilling finality. The Dominion had fought countless wars before, but never against an enemy like humanity. Never against an opponent that adapted, that learned, that fought with ruthless, unrelenting precision. They think they can drown us in numbers, Rain said. His gaze locked on the void beyond. What they don't understand is we don't fight like them. We don't play by their rules. Solace nodded, though unease shadowed his eyes. Even so, Admiral, this isn't just a fleet anymore. This is the Dominion's entire war machine. Hundreds of battle groups, millions of soldiers. Weapons we haven't even seen. Rains's reply was simple, quiet, and iron. Then we'll fight smarter. And we'll fight harder. Carter's voice carried steady over the channel. Carter's fingers danced over her console. That's not the worst of it. Our spies confirm. The Dominion is reaching out to other major powers. They're trying to rally the entire galactic community against us. That was the true danger. Humanity had only just carved its name into the stars, and already they were being branded a universal threat. If the Dominion succeeded in swaying the neutrals, Earth wouldn't be fighting one empire, it would be facing the combined wrath of the galaxy. A lesser race might have folded, might have begged for diplomacy, tried to bargain, tried to survive. But humans weren't built that way. Rains turned toward his officers, his voice like tempered steel. Then we send a message of our own. Solace raised an eyebrow. And what message is that? Rains's eyes hardened. That making an enemy of Earth will be the last mistake they ever make. Across the fleet, the orders spread like wildfire. War preparations began. Humanity would not bow. Humanity would break its enemies. The Dominion wasted no time. Within days of the slaughter at Vela 9, reports cascaded in from every sector. Entire battle groups were mobilizing, fleets stretching for light years, converging toward human space. The Dominion had called for two. Rains's voice was steady. We bleed them. We don't let them dictate the war, he continued. We take it to them. Every step, every breath. A slow grin crept across Carter's face. You mean hit and run? Not just hit and run, Rains clarified. Total disruption. We don't just strike. We gut their supply chains, cripple their networks, and turn every world between here and Earth into a graveyard. They'll think they're advancing on victory, but by the time they arrive, they'll be broken. Solace gave a dark chuckle. Guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale. Rains nodded. It's what we do best. The plan ignited instantly. Strike teams slipped into enemy lanes, planting sleeper agents and sabotage cells in vital hubs. Fuel depots erupted before a single battle could begin. Stealth wings hunted Dominion scouts, blinding their long-range vision. Then came the hammer blows. At Zeroa Station, the Dominion Central Resupply Hub human infiltrators shut down automated defenses, just minutes before a strike fleet arrived. Explosions ripped through the docks, tearing it apart before the enemy even organized a counterattack. At Back 5, an industrial forge world, a string of accidents cascaded into catastrophe. The Dominion's prime shipyards lit up in a chain. Reaction: hundreds of vessels reduced to slag in a single day. At Viok Prime, a critical communications nexus, human cyber warfare teams unleashed a digital virus so vicious it rewrote entire command hierarchies. Orders scrambled, reinforcements misrouted, and more than once, Dominion ships opened fire on each other in the chaos. The galaxy had never seen war waged like this. The Dominion, so steeped in centuries of honorable attrition, was flailing against shadows. Humanity wasn't fighting with brute strength. They were fighting with merciless creativity. And then came the turning point. The Dominion Dreadnought Vector, a fortress in motion, carrying half the War Council to the front, was struck. Everyone believed it untouchable. The humans proved them wrong. A single stealth corvette, the HSS Phantom, ghosted through its escort screen. Aboard were Earth's finest soldiers bred for impossible odds. They boarded the Vector, slicing through defenders with surgical silence. Within an hour, the Dominion's War Council lay dead in their own chamber, throats cut where they once gave orders. By the time alarms spread, the Phantom was gone. Panic erupted. Coalition leaders faltered. Fleets stalled. For the first time, the war machine groaned to a halt, not from superior weapons, but because the enemy's faith had been shattered. Solus stood beside Rains, scanning the reports. "They don't know how to react," he said, grinning. "They're used to armies, not ideas." Rains smirked faintly. "That's because they don't understand who they're fighting." Solus raised a brow. "And who is that?" Rains's eyes hardened, cold and resolute. "Humans." The Dominion's war machine was grinding to a halt, not from shortages or lack of reinforcements. No, the real enemy wasn't hunger, nor attrition. It was doubt. The Dominion no longer knew where to strike. Every time they gathered for a decisive push, their supply lines crumbled. Every regrouping ended with commanders dead, fleets sabotaged. They weren't fighting soldiers, they were fighting phantoms. Admiral Rains stood at the helm of the HSS Retribution, gazing into the endless stars. Intelligence reports told the same story. The Dominion was stalling. Their allies faltered. The Turalis, ever opportunists, withdrew their fleets, unwilling to bleed further. The Voron hierarchy, once eager to prove loyalty, were losing ships faster than they could be built. Only the Dominion itself clung to survival, and barely. Commander Nathan Solus stepped up beside him. "We've bled them, Admiral. They're broken. One strike, one decisive blow, and it ends." Rains exhaled slowly. "And your target?" Solus tapped the holomap. The display focused on a single star system. Primaris I, the Dominion's homeworld. Not just a stronghold, its living heart. "You want to hit their capital?" Rains asked, brow raised. Solus nodded firmly. "They think we're raiders, Shadows. But if we strike Primaris, if we gut them at the core, they'll have no choice but surrender." Major Carter's voice crackled through comms. "He's right. Take out the Council, and the Dominion collapses. Without them, the Coalition scatters." Rains studied the projection for a long, heavy moment. The final move of a bloody game. The Dominion had demanded total war. Humanity would deliver it. "We do it," he said at last. "We take the capital. We end this." The battle for Primaris I began in fire and fury. The HSS Retribution emerged from slipstream at the head of humanity's full fleet. Dominion defenses filled the system battle. Groups, planetary cannons, entire fortresses, but none of it mattered. Humanity didn't fight fair. Electronic warfare teams hijacked communications, feeding false commands. Dominion fleets tore each other apart in confusion. Orbital strikes leveled power grids, command centers, shield relays. The sky burned. Then came the ground assault. Elite shock troopers stormed Vecta Prime, the Dominion's capital city, where the ruling War Council had entrenched themselves inside the Citadel of Lords. The proud empire of conquerors was now under siege. Nathan Solus led the breach himself. His strike team carved through defenders, stormed the chamber, weapons raised. The once mighty warlords cowered behind their thrones. One, a high-ranking commander, hissed through jagged fangs. This is impossible. "We are the Dominion. You are beneath us." Solus leveled his rifle coldly. "Not anymore." The shot cracked. From orbit, Admiral Rains watched as the Dominion's surrender spread across the galaxy. Their empire had been shattered, not by greater numbers, not by overwhelming firepower, but by merciless strategy. The war was over. Humanity had stepped onto the galactic stage, not as pawns, not as prey, but as predators to be feared. The galaxy would not forget, but peace was no certainty. The Dominion's defeat sent shockwaves across the stars. Their fleets drifted leaderless, fractured. Their allies, once eager to crush humanity, now scrambled to distance themselves from the losing side. Some worlds rejoiced in the fall off their oppressors. Others feared what would come next. Humanity had proven itself a force to be reckoned with. But no, the real question remained: what would they do with their victory, Admiral? Rains sat alone in his private quarters aboard the Shatters Retribution, staring at the latest reports across former Dominion spaceships had erupted entire colonies that had once been enslaved were rising up urging their former overlords. Some called for independence, others called for revenge, and some called for human rule. A soft chime rang through the cabin door slid open, revealing Major Carter. She saluted sharply before stepping inside. "We have a problem, sir," she said. Rains set down his data pad. "Just one." Carter didn't smile. "More like a dozen reports are coming in from the outer Dominion sectors. Some of their military governors refuse to acknowledge the surrender they've declared themselves, warlords freelying whatever fleets they have left." Rains exhaled. "Of course they have." Carter hesitated. "And there's something else. The coalition Asunisi, the same species that were once willing to fight us, now see us as the next galactic supersum, are already whispering that humanity is the new threat." Rains leaned back in his chair. Had expected this. No. Empire simply won a war and walked away without consequences. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity, but fear was a fragile thing. It could turn into respect, or it could turn into hatred before he could respond. Thindercom crackled. "Admiral, incoming transmission from the Terran High Council. Priority 1." Rains glanced at Carter, then nodded. Patched through the holographic display flickered to life, revealing the stern face of Chancellor Elias Monroe, Earth's highest-ranking political leader. His expression was unreadable. "Admiral Rains Monroe," said his voice measured. "Congratulations on your victory." Rains inclined his head. "Thank you, sir." Monroe's eyes darkened. "But I'm afraid we have little time to celebrate. The Dominion is broken, but not destroyed. Rogue warlords are already rallying their forces, and worse, the galactic community sees us as an unstable power. If we don't act swiftly, we risk another war before this one is even cold." Rieg Sunders, "What's the Council's decision?" Monroe took a deep breath. "We occupy the Dominion's core worlds. We stabilize the region under human governance." Carter's eyes widened slightly. Even Rains felt the weight of those words. "You want us to rule them?" Reinsassed carefully. "Temporarily," Monroe clarified. "We don't have to hold their entire empire, just the key systems. If we don't, another power will, and the last thing we need is another galactic warlord rising up to finish what the Dominion started." Rains folded his arms. "And what happens when we do take control? Do we leave? Do we stay? How long before humanity becomes just another empire?" Monroe's face was unreadable. "That depends on what happens next." The transmission cut out. Carter exhaled. "We just won the war, and know we're about to start something bigger." Rains nodded slowly. He knew what came next wouldn't be about battles or fleets. It would be about power, and power had a way of changing everything. The occupation of the Dominion's core worlds began swiftly. Humanity moved with surgical precision, deploying fleets to strategic locations, securing vital infrastructure, and ensuring that no warlord could rise from the ashes of the shattered empire. At first, the remnants of the Dominion fought back. Scattered military units, desperate to reclaim their lost glory, launched ambushes against human patrols. Terrorist cells, fueled by hatred for their new rulers, detonated explosives in key government centers. But none of it was enough. The Terran forces had fought too long, too hard. Dominion space threats still loomed deep in the uncharted regions of the galaxy. Something watched. A shadowy figure stood aboard a darkened command bridge, its form obscured by swirling mist behind it. A group of hooded figures murmured in annihilation tongue, "The humans have proven themselves formidable." One voice said, "They have accomplished what none before them could. They are dangerous." Another agreed, "But they are also reckless. Their empire is built on force, not stability." A third voice, older and colder, spoke last. "Then let us ensure they never find stability. Let us remind them that in the darkness of the void, there are things far older and far deadlier than them." The hooded figures nodded in unison, and the shadows moved back on Vecta Prime. Admiral Al Rain stood on the balcony of the former Dominion Palace, overlooking Thessaly. Below, human banners flew where Dominion emblems once stood. Armed patrols moved through the streets. The once mighty empire of conquerors now lived under human rule. Solace stepped beside him. "So what now?" Rains didn't answer immediately. He looked out at the stars, knowing that their Victory had only led to greater dangers. The war had ended, but the next battle was just beginning. The shadows moved unseen. Whispering through the void between the stars, humanity had conquered the Dominion. But something far older had been watching, and now it was moving. Admiral Rains sat in his command chamber, aboard the HSS Retribution, reviewing intelligence reports. The Dominion's remaining forces were either surrendering or tearing each other apart. The occupation was holding for no, but the weight of their victory was already pressing down on him. Commander Solace entered the chamber without a word dropping. A data pad onto the table. His expression was grim. Rains picked up the data pad. What am I looking at? Solace folded his arms. A pattern one. We shouldn't be seeing. The report contained star maps marked with strange anomalies. At first glance they looked like nothing, just deep space disturbances, unexplored voids. But the more Rains studied them, the more he saw the truth. These systems, Rains muttered, they're dying. Solace nodded. Sensors picked up something strange in multiple Dominion territories. Planets with sudden mass extinctions, orbital stations going completely dark, entire fleets disappearing, no distress calls, no debris, just gone. Rains leaned forward. Are we dealing with a rogue faction? Solace hesitated. We don't think this is Dominion related, sir. Some of these star systems weren't even occupied, and yet something erased them. A chill ran down Rains' spine. The Dominion had been a brutal empire, but they had been predictable. This ? This was something else. Where was the last incident? Rains asked. Solace tapped the datapad. A single name appeared. Zaris 4, a fringe colony world deep in former Dominion space. No communications for over a week. Solace said it was supposed to be a minor refueling station. Population of 600. 0. Our scout sent a probe. Rains glanced up and Solace hesitated before swiping on the datapad. The holographic display flickered to life, showing footage from the probe. At first, nothing but static, then darkness. The planet below was eerily silent, covered in deep black scars. No lights, no movement. Cities were still intact, yet lifeless. No visible damage, but every building looked wrong, as if something had emptied them. Then the footage cut to black. That was the last transmission. Solace said after that the probe was gone. Rain set the data pad down slowly. This isn't the rebellion, he said. No. Solace agreed. This is something else. Rains clenched his jaw. He had spent his career fighting enemies. He could understand the Dominion for all their cruelty. Had been live, but whatever this was, it felt like death itself. The HSS Revenant arrived at Zealous 4. Within the week, it was one of humanity's best reconnaissance vessels, outfitted with stealth tech and deep space sensors. Major Carter led the team. Personally, landing in one of the colony's main cities, she stepped out off the dropship, pulse rifle in hand, her boots crunching against the eerily silent streets. The city was untouched but empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Doors were left open. Meals half-eaten on tables. It was as if the entire colony had simply vanished. Jesus, one of her soldiers muttered. This is worse than a battlefield. Carter kept moving, scanning the area. Then she stopped. Her HUD flickered. A whisper echoed in her helmet. A strange, static-filled voice. You are not ready. Then the lights above flickered and the shadows began to move back on the HSS Retribution. Alarms blurred, sir. An officer shouted. We just lost contact with the Revenant. One moment they were there, and then nothing. Rains shot up from his seat. Get me visuals. The screen flickered. At first, nothing but static, then an image, a single frame. The ruins of Zealous 4, and something standing in the center of the city, tall, features blacker than space itself, watching. The transmission cut. Silence fell across the bridge, then slowly Solace exhaled. Admiral, he said quietly, what the hell did we just wake up? The silence that followed was thick with tension. The bridge crew of the HSS Retribution remained frozen, staring at the dark screen where the last image of Zaris 4 had played. Admiral Rains felt the weight settle in his gut. He had fought wars, seen entire fleets reduced to wreckage, watched civilizations crumble under orbital bombardments. But this was something else. This was an enemy he couldn't see, and it had just wiped out one of his best teams. Solace exhaled sharply. Orders. Sir. Rains's mind raced. The smart move, logical move, was to pull back, report this anomaly to the Terran High Council, and let scientists and analysts break it down, but Major Carter was down there. His soldiers were down there. He wasn't leaving them behind. Prep or recon. Team Rains ordered. We're going to Zealous 4. Solace tensed. Sir, we don't even know what we're up against. Rains met his gaze. Then it's time. We found out hours later. The HSS Revenant 2, a heavily armed infiltration cruiser, descended into the dead skies of Zaris 4. The storm clouds above were unnatural black, twisting alive. The sensor struggled to penetrate the haze. But Rains didn't need a perfect reading. He could feel it in his bones. Something was wrong here. Aboard the dropship, the retrieval team double-checked their weapons, experimental plasma rifles, motion trackers, and enough explosives to level a city block. Remember, Rains said over the comms, this isn't a rescue mission. We don't know if anyone's left alive. The dropship doors slid open, revealing the ruins of the city below, and the emptiness. Buildings stood intact. Vehicles remained parked along the street lights flickered in eerie rhythmic pulses, but there were no bodies, no signs of struggle, just a city abandoned in an instant. The team moved forward cautiously. Eyes up, Sess muttered, scanning the rooftops. This place feels like a goddamn grave. Rains gritted his teeth. It wasn't a grave. A grave had bodies. This was. They found the HSS Revenant near the city center, untouched but iridescent. The ship's exterior was fine, no battle scars, no forced entry, yet the crew was missing. Rains stepped inside, rifle raised. The interior was intact, but the air was thick with something unnatural. The lights flickered. Shadows seemed longer than they should have been, and in the command center, a single message had been scrolled across the walls in black tar-like fluid. They are not dead, they were taken. Rains felt a cold chill crawl up his spine, then his gown crackled. Sir, came a shaky voice. You need to see this. Rains followed the signal to a side alley. A single figure stood in the shadows, helmet cracked, armor scorched. Major Carter alive, but when she turned, Rains saw her eyes. They weren't hers anymore, and she started to whisper in a voice that wasn't her own. They airy awake. The air in the alley grew colder as Major Carter's voice rasped through the cals, unnatural and layered as something ancient spoke through her. They are awake. Admiral Rains tightened his grip on his rifle, his instincts screaming at him to fire, to end whatever this was. But this was Carter, one of his best. He couldn't act yet. Carter, he said, his voice steady despite the dread clawing at him. What's happening? Who's awake? Her head tilted unnaturally, her blank hollow eyes locking onto his. The ones who came for, the ones who wait beyond. You woke them when you tore the Dominion apart, Commander. Solace's stepped forward, his weapon trained on her. Admiral, she's not herself. We need to. Before he could finish, the ground trembled. A low resonant hum pulsed through the city, vibrating in their bones. The shadows around them stretched and twisted, no longer bound by the loss of light or physics from the edges of the streets. Tall, featureless figures merged, blacker than the void, their forms shifting like liquid darkness. Red Rains barked into his comms. All units fall back to the drop ship now. The team didn't hesitate. They opened fire as they retreated, plasma rounds steering into the figures. The shots seemed to dissipate into nothingness, walled by the entity's forms. The hum grew louder, drowning out the sound of gunfire. Carter didn't move. She stood there, whispering as the shadows closeted in. Rains grabbed Sess, not leaving her. Sir, she's gone. Solace shouted, pulling back. Look at her. But Rains didn't listen. He charged forward, slamming into Carter and dragging her toward the dropship. Her body was limp, but her lips kept moving, muttering Jincomprians words. The entities surged after them faster. Now the city itself seemed to warp, buildings bending inward, streets cracking as though reality was unraveling. The dropship engines roared to life as the team piled in rings through Carter inside. Just as one of the shadow figures reached for him, Solace's fired a point-blank plasma burst, and for a split second, entity recoiled, enough time for the doors to slam shut. Get us out of here. Regan's roared. The dropship shot into the sky, the HSS Revenant 2 waiting